Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Men and Sex. I'm your host, Mr. Wood. And today we've got, I don't even know if you know this, but you're one of my favorite teachers. I just love the way that you teach. Today we've got Carly Rae, who does hands on. I love that you say hands on and hands in pelvic work. So Carly works with women not only helping them understand their bodies, but deeply know their bodies.
Yeah.
So, welcome to the show, Carly.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Would you just share a little bit more? Because I know there's such a depth to your work, but knowing that this audience is mostly men, what is it that they could know about the work that you do with women?
Yeah, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, women's health is in an epidemic right now, and men that affects our relationships deeply, right? So my work with women is helping women navigate their sexual health, their pelvic health, menstrual health, so that they can actually be healthy and thrive in this world that we're living in, so that they can be having the kind of sex that they want to be having, so that they are fertile, so that they're not living on this insane fucking hormonal roller coaster and ruining their lives because of it, you know? And men are in conjunction suffering in how unhealthy women's bodies have become in this day and age.
And I feel like we're in a dance together, which is our suffering of lack of understanding of one another. And particularly, I can speak from the side of being a man.
Yeah,
I can look back and see how much suffering was there because of my own lack of understanding of a woman and what's going on with her that's different than me.
totally. Yeah,
I mean,
totally.
even if we just look at one subject of understanding a monthly cycle,
Yeah.
just that piece, when I started to understand that more, so much suffering went away of stories I was making up, making problems about me, trying to fix things when I didn't need to.
Yeah. We've been so indoctrinated in this world where women are we think women should perform the way men perform. Women should function the way men should function. And we're just such radically different animals. And the more we can understand the differences, the easier, the happier, the healthier, the more joyful our lives can be, right?
And this is for the listeners, something Carly and I talked about before we got on the show is that we really want to focus on helping you understand a little bit more about a woman's body and also understand that there's a lot of women that don't have this understanding that you might pick up on in this episode. You might relate with women, probably likely that you relate with women that they don't have this understanding themselves.
Yeah. Yeah. I see this a lot in men who are like, I want to do the work. I want to like I'm showing up and I'm educating myself and I'm, putting in the work. They're starting to understand women's bodies, women's cycles more than women are. And that's exciting. Women really need to step up to the plate. I'm a huge, huge advocate of self-responsibility, and the majority of women are not taking enough responsibility for their bodies and understanding their bodies at the level that they should, so that they can actually be fucking happy, and know what kind of sex, what kind of touch they want to be having in their lives and actually be experiencing the levels of pleasure and just contentment in their lives that they should have.
I know this is a can of worms and a big question to ask, but I want to ask it to you. What are some of the major things that have got us to where we are today with women being so, and I know this is, men as well, but women in particular being so disconnected from their bodies and in this state that you're seeing and these things that you're talking about? What are some major things that have led us to this place in your eyes?
I really believe it started at the turn of the century when industrialization started to come in and birth was taken out of the hands of women and turned into a medical event and essentially became a business. Birth became a business as soon as it entered into Western medicine. As soon as that happened, and North America essentially is becoming industrialized, we had this idea that being animalistic was this bad, wrong thing, and that you were a good person if you bought into convenience, bought into Western medicine, and women just ate it hook, line, and sinker. It's insane. And they totally abdicated their role as women, abdicated their bodies, and just handed all of their power over to men in white coats. Unfortunately, and that to me is really the decline in women's health and women's connections to their bodies and just where everything started to turn.
You say you work hands on and hands in with pelvic work. Will you share with us what that type of work is like with a woman's body that you're doing?
Yeah, so I work with women's full vulva inside her vagina. And the work is sometimes it's pleasure based, but the majority of times it's therapeutically based. So working with scar tissue, trauma, congestion, pelvic pain, neuralgia, you name it, any kind of issue in the pelvis. And the majority of women, unfortunately, have never experienced a truly nourishing kind of touch. So the sessions are really, really slow. We take our time, and it's centered around a woman being able to say, to give true consent, to be able to ask for what she wants, to be able to say yes, say no, to have my hand on her vulva and stay fully present and not disassociate, which is very, very common for women these days to not be able to stay in their bodies, unfortunately. So yeah, it's this really slow journey of touching a woman's every single different structure in a woman's vulva and vagina and working through that tissue, whatever's being held there, whether it's physical stagnation, energetic stagnation, emotional holding patterns, trauma experiences stored in the tissue, so that a woman can actually move through this and experience health and vitality in her pelvis.
When you're working and with all these different layers that you talked about, can you feel like actual releases or
Yeah.
relaxing or
Totally. You can feel like scar tissue completely melt and shift and change, and the uterus and the cervix realign, and the symmetry of the pelvic diaphragm come back into balance. The pelvic bones all shift and realign. Yeah.
that has to be a pretty powerful feeling?
Yeah. Yeah. It's pretty incredible work. And it's work that is extremely rare and is left out of the majority of body work. Massage therapy, physical therapy, even the work that is offered in physical therapy is again coming from all Western medicine and is a very symptomatic, disconnected approach, where my approach is about working with the whole woman in every single thing on every single layer that she brings to the table.
You said something huge, and I just want to look at it again. You said women have never experienced nourishing touch.
Very few have.
Yeah.
I've worked with many women in their 70s, and the majority of older women that I've worked with have never been truly touched in a nourishing, respectful, caring way, where it's all about their body, going at their body's pace. And that's heartbreaking. And this is like it goes hand in hand. Men don't know how to touch women, and women don't know their bodies, so they don't know how to ask for the kind of touch that they want. And it's what two sides of a coin, right? Where we need education on both sides, because both men and women have been so indoctrinated by pornography and TV and television. And again, it cycles back to this idea that women's bodies should perform like a man's body. And our physiology does not. And I'm very outspoken on women's bodies. Women are not men. Our physiology is not the same as male physiology. The way our brain works, our hormonal system, our nervous system, everything is responding differently and producing different chemicals and hormones and neurotransmitters. And the more we can understand that, and especially if we want like long-term nourishing sex where both people are fed and met, that requires a whole undoing of what we've been taught by the mainstream world.
And there's an important piece here that I want the listeners to get is, like I said, you may hear something here that the women you're with have no idea about.
Yeah,
And so your partner that you're with may think they like sex a certain way, but it's all they've ever known. They
yeah,
may only know aggressive, boundary breaking,
yeah,
penetrative, forceful. That might be all that they know, and they've never experienced that nourishment.
yeah,
And they may be perpetuating it. And I know you could probably say a lot about this. They may be perpetuating it in their own self pleasure. They may just be doing 5 minute jackhammering with their vibrator because that's what they learned early on. That's what they've experienced with the way that men have sex with them, et cetera, et cetera. Will you
yeah.
speak about where women are with their self pleasure that's been impacted by masculinity and porn and all
Totally.
that?
Yeah, absolutely. And that, like you said it perfectly, 5 minute jackhammering is the status quo relationship that women have with their vulvas. Women, a lot of women think that they can only orgasm with a vibrator. And that's because they are so wired into this fast, forceful, and this idea that they should be having an orgasm in 5 minutes. And when a woman orgasms in 5 minutes, it's just like a fucking sneeze. It's just this little blip that is pretty much a waste of a woman's time, as far as I'm concerned. Women take, like a man become fully engorged, fully erect in seconds. That's how your physiology works. For women to become fully erect and fully engorged of all our arousal tissue in our pelvis, it can take minimum 30 minutes up to an hour, depending on where she is in her cycle, how stressful her day was, how nourished she is, all of these things. A woman stereotypically will become more aroused or aroused at a quicker pace at ovulation compared to menstruation. So all our hormones are responding differently at different phases of our cycle. So just that basic understanding that our physiology requires time to experience pleasure, to experience engorgement, where full sensation can come on into our tissue. I would say 90% of women in our world have never experienced full engorgement because when they're just ripping off this quick sneeze orgasm with a vibrator, engorgement isn't happening. It's just, some contractions of the musculature and the nerves, and they're having a sneeze essentially. And this has all been taught by the porn industry where women are just going into, theatrics immediately. And it's a slow burn in women's bodies. It's a real slow burn of building that sensation of full engorgement, blood literally infusing these tissues so that we are wet, so that we are engorged, so that we can feel all these different levels and depths and valleys of sensation. So, yeah, the majority of women are not fucking experiencing that. They have very little relationship with the slow and soft. A lot of women require a hard, fast touch. And especially if a woman has like her sexual repertoire is just hard and fast being fucked all the time. Friction-based sex is what the majority of people are experiencing today. Majority of women also don't know how to actually move their vagina, move their pelvic diaphragm because everything's just locked up and tight and immobile. And when we don't have that
Mm.
movement, we don't have that engorgement, and we're just having this friction based sex where the penis is just moving in and out of the vagina as fast as possible, and we're rubbing off on the clit with fingers or with a vibrator. It's just like super surface level of what a woman is able to experience in her body. Sex truly is meant to be suction. A woman's vagina is meant to suck. on the man's penis and have that level of, you should have that level of control over your pelvic diaphragm and be able to move it around your partner's cock. And again, the majority of women don't know that that's even possible, and don't have that ability, right? You're an athlete. You can see this in people who are athletic, the ability, the control they have over their bodies to move and do incredible things. The majority of people are not there, right? And that it needs to be developed. It's a skill.
Right, right. There's an understanding needed and then a practice of trying it out. Okay, how do I do this? How do I do this? How do I do this? Will you speak a little bit on, okay, you said 30 to 60 minutes, depending upon in the monthly cycle for full arousal.
Yeah.
What all is going on, or what are a lot of different layers to what's happening in her body when she's actually opening to that full arousal?
Well, just specifically in the vulva and inside the vagina, like a woman's outer labias, her inner labias, the full size, most women don't know that their clitoris is massive. It's not just the tip, the glands that we can see and touch on the outside. There's a shaft and legs and bulbs, and all of this tissue is meant to fill. And just like a man gets a hard on, women can get hard ons as well. It just looks very different, and our hard on is mostly inside our vagina. So everything should puff up and get pinker or redder and essentially swell with fluids. So when that starts to happen, and a lot of women also with their what is more commonly known as the G spot, but the urethral sponge, there's this cascading of arousal building in the female body. It starts more with the clitoris will start building, getting aroused, blood will start flowing into the tissue, and then the urethral sponge. There's also another tissue called the perineal sponge, which lies at the back wall of the vagina. These tissues will also start to become engorged. And this is where female ejaculate. Some people don't believe in female ejaculation. It's real. Every single woman has the ability to ejaculate. It's not pee. It's a very different fluid. A lot of women, if they that are ejaculating, are also doing it in kind of a wrong way, in a more of a forceful
Mm,
way. A lot of women are having their urethral sponge just being fucking hammered by
yeah.
things. And true female ejaculation is just this flooding of the waters. But again, that doesn't happen if the full engorgement, full arousal doesn't happen. So there's this down regulation in the nervous system where a woman feels truly safe, truly open, truly comfortable, and she's not in her head thinking about what does my body look like? What do I need to cook? Yada, 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 all the fucking bullshit. She's in her body. There's the safety that is there. And all her fluids are being sent to her pelvis, essentially. All of the blood flow is being sent to her pelvis, and tissues deeper are becoming engorged. And then even the cervix and the uterus. When we get to a level of connection and engorgement, there's cervical activation and uteral activation where they are playing a huge role in our pleasure as well. That
You
takes
said
time to get there.
you said two words a couple times that I think are really important for men in particular to heal or hear, which was in her body and safe.
Yeah, yeah,
In her body and safe. And that whatever we can do to help create that container
yeah.
is going to allow them, to drop into those deeper experiences, to be in their body more. And I feel that's part of, because I've been Perry's container. I follow your stuff. Like, I'm in a world that a lot of men aren't in. And
Yes.
so I very commonly, I think always, I don't think I've ever been in contact with a woman's body that knows these things that you're talking about.
Yeah.
And so I'm experiencing this relationship with women that don't have the knowledge or practices that you share here. And so I can share with the listeners that the more you learn about this, you'll start to feel it in the people that you relate with. Like, I can feel when I'm with a woman that has learned just that penetrative, forceful,
Yeah.
she's never felt touch like you talked about. Her body has never opened to the fullness like you talked about. She's never dropped into her body to and felt that safety, probably thinking about, so often it's how do I look? Do I look good enough? That sort of mind. And so, man, not only is this a fun path, a powerful path for us to learn on our own journey, but then it also allows us to know that, okay, how can I create this space for her to be more in her body? How can I be more in her body and it calls her more into her body? How can
Yeah.
I create safety here as well so that this opening can take place?
Yeah. And that creating that safety happens outside the bedroom, as far as I'm
Totally.
concerned. This
Totally.
is a everyday relation. How are you relating to your woman? How are you taking care of your woman? Do you say shit about her pubic hair? Do you say shit about her menstruation? Are you grossed out and don't want to touch her pussy when she's bleeding? This kind of stuff. Do you say mean things about if she's got a belly, if her breasts are starting to sag, or if she's got a bit of a scent? All these kinds of little things that happen all the time in relationships are compounding and creating disconnection and putting up walls, and really fucking with a couple's sex life big time, right? And one thing that I think is super important to state is that all of our, like my pleasure, my partner's pleasure, it's our responsibility. But when you come together and as a couple, it's your responsibility together to be creating this safety in a relationship, to be creating the kind of environment where both of you can be in your bodies and not be, not my partner not worrying about if he's going to ejaculate too soon, and me not worrying about it's like, well, does my pussy smell today, or is something off, or, is my pubic hair too long? All these stupid little things that really fuck people up big time
It is
and
what
create a lot of disconnection. And the more we normalize, and this ties back to the movement of industrialization in the current world we live in. We have become so disconnected from our animalistic, messy, gross, dirty selves, you know? And that is fucking with our sex lives big time. The more we can come into relationship with the animal and not be grossed out by bodies and fluids and scents and smells and all these things and really get dirty, and real with one another, we'll be having way better sex.
I got a couple things that spiraled out of that. But the first thing I want everyone to hear again is that the safety is created outside of the bedroom.
100%. Yeah.
And this is where doing the things you said you were going to do. I know
Absolutely.
accountability brings up the shame, but these are aspects of wise because it's a container, it's solid. I said I'm going to do this, I do it. The
Yeah.
little comments that you say,
Yeah.
when she is looking nice and you don't say something about it. There's all these subtle things that are creating the safety that shows up in the bedroom.
And showing up for her when she is bleeding and she feels like a bag of dick and she's bloated and, and just taking care of her and not being a jerk and not smacking her ass when she's menstruating. Like having that understanding is huge too.
That's like a next level guy understanding that I love that you're bringing, which is, and I think I'm actually having someone coming on the podcast. We're going to talk all about just the monthly cycle, because that understanding of when things are okay and when things you should be mindful about. Like you said, when she's menstruating, don't go up and slap her on the ass where some other period of time that might be okay. That takes awareness. That's like
Yes.
mature next level masculinity to be aware of those things.
Yeah. 100%.
And I think I have my own projections of you and watching you on social media and your life, and you're with nature and you're with animals and you're out doing that. And I think you're such a potent person to talk about this. And I would love to talk about it more, which is calling in that the connection to the animal side.
Hmm.
And for me personally, this is a huge catalyst for my own growth and introspection, of sexuality is like, where is my primal nature? Where is it outside of my mind?
Yeah.
Where is that just like deep in the body arousal?
Yeah.
And I think this is huge for everyone. But I think a lot of men too, the sterilization that you talk about of the mind of porn and just how it's all become. I think there are a lot of guys that are grossed out by smells. Things have to
Totally.
look all sterilized a certain way. And let's talk about the impacts of that because I think a lot of it's unconscious and men think it's choice.
We are homogenizing our bodies, the culture, so that everything is whitewashed. And it is just, it's dumbing everything down, and taking everything down into this extremely boring, lifeless, like life is just being gray washed, where and all the colors being taken out of it when we sterilize our worlds, and are so disconnected and uncomfortable in reality, in real fucking life that is dirty and messy and gross, right? And that primalness gets completely fucking wiped out. And especially in this day and age, because men have become so fucking demonized, I think a lot of men are scared of their primal truth,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
And we are at a point in our world, we deeply need men to come into right relationship with that aspect of themselves. Because it's being drowned right now by the overculture. And again, it's just this mass gray washing of our whole world and who we are as people into even more domesticated, controlled, enslaved humans.
I've never thought about it to the layers that you're talking about here of how watching porn and seeing porn magazines and everyone with their perfect pubic hair or
A lot of women,
Brazilian wax
but
or
and women's bodies, like pretty much every porn star, women have had vulvoplasty so that all their vulvas look the same, and they're getting bleaching so that all their vulva and anal tissue gets the same. And then this is what the people are just indoctrinated in, and they think that this is normal. And then we see a woman who has long inner labias that have some color to them, and it's just like men are getting so grossed out by that. And yeah, men are having really boring fucking sex because they want this very sterilized, homogenized body from women.
I think about it all the way to the layer of how a lot of people are doing it in the dark with all the lights off,
Exactly.
don't
Want to
see.
see a thing? Just get the penis inside the vagina. Let's do, a few pumps and fucking be over with it. And I think that's the average sex that most people are having, because again, this also ties back to religion. And so many people are indoctrinated in the belief that you are bad and dirty and it is sinful. And we have a lot of undoing to do, right? To come back into relationship with the truth of our bodies and our primal animalistic selves. I think it's really the only way, because we see this in birth too, how women have been taught to be quiet and just lie on their back and do nothing to give birth to a baby. And giving birth is the most sexual animalistic act that a human can do, that a woman can do. And it's
Right.
been everything when it comes to the body has been sterilized and domesticated.
It's so interesting because in my own experience, I've felt different layers of this, which is the fear of the wild feminine, the fear, like, because that's the power. There's so much power there, whether we look in nature or actually look at women. But it's like that feminine, chaotic power that's not linear, the same all the time. And even if I just look at relationship and through like a normal context, it's always there of men trying to figure out why women behave the way that they do in that losing battle. And it's just like in my own path, I think I'm in the phase right now where I'm really calling that in of just like I want the wild feminine. I want to move away from that sterilization. Um, I guess I'm just sharing this with the men listening of that it is a process when you have been sold that Playboy center spread
Yes.
and that
100%.
porn. You will think that's what you like, but it's just what you've been programmed with.
Exactly. It's what you've been programmed with, and it's what looks good on the exterior. I know that men who are with women who are the women who are done up to the fucking nines, who take hours to do their hair, hours to do their makeup, who have, the fake eyelashes, the fake nails, the Botox in their lips, they're having the worst sex of their lives. It's fucking boring. Their pussies are dry and numb, and the women are just having sex because they have to. It's just part of the role. But they're pretty. They're super fucking pretty. And people think, have this idea that the wild feminine is means you're going to be having this insane fucking sex all over the place, and that's not true either.
Yeah.
It's not sex swings and all these gimmicks and gadgets and fucking theatrics. That's all fake. It's having the deepest, nourishing sex where if someone quiffs or farts in sex, it doesn't ruin the day. Nobody gets grossed out. You're in love with one another's scent and fluids, and it's beautiful, right? It's not this wild theatrical thing that we have built up in our heads.
So a bit of a jump, but threads to the subject. We've talked about 30 to 60 minutes for full arousal. We've talked about slowness, safety, helping women to be able to drop into their bodies. What is it? What is some other elements that for men to understand about touching a woman and this realization that so many of them have never been touched in a way that their body really wants?
So a lot of people, when they hear that 30 to 60 minutes for full arousal, get really overwhelmed and think, well, I don't have time to have sex for that long every
Yeah.
fucking day, right? And like, because women are a slow burn, it's arousal starts just at the beginning of our day. It's like, did you take the garbage out for her? Did you maybe take the dogs for a walk for her? Did you do these little things that really make a difference for her? Did you send her a really sweet text? You know, like these little acts and sweet little words and the sweet kisses on her forehead and just treating your woman like a fucking queen, that is going to create the slow burn throughout the whole day that is going to build arousal in her. Because really, we can talk about all the anatomy in the pelvis. The only sex organ is the brain. And if your brain's
Mm,
not on, her brain's not on, then it's just a physical act of friction, right?
mm,
Um, so there's that aspect of it. And then when it comes to actually touching a woman's body, again, we've been conditioned into the fast and the hard and slowing everything down. Granted, she might not feel much, and a lot of women are holding a lot of numbness in their
mm.
vulva, in their vagina, and women need to step up to the plate and come into relationship with their pussies and know how to touch themselves and kick the vibrator addiction. Um, so just holding your whole hand on your woman's vulva and breathe with her and kiss her and just stay there. Not for 30 seconds, but for like 5 minutes, you know, and not rush the process. We rush and rush and rush everything in our fucking life. And if we can slow our sex down, sex literally has the ability to heal a man and a woman's body. But when we do it right, not when we're doing this fast food, convenient bullshit, when we're doing the slow cooker meal that takes 24 fucking hours to cook, right? And the intention there is very different. Like sometimes, yeah, it's nice to have a quickie,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Totally normal, nothing wrong with that. But when it's always a quickie, you're always eating fast food, what are you going to feel like? Piece of shit.
Yeah.
Where if you're changing your priorities in your life, where it's like, ah, I'm going to go to the farmer's market and buy really beautiful food. I'm going to take it home and actually going to like take my time cooking this and have that slow burn. It's the same thing with sex. You want a quickie or you want the slow nourishing, right?
And it's so funny how the mind does that because it's like, I can't do 30 minutes to 60 minutes every time. It's like how it just swings the pendulum of extreme the other way. It's like, well, no, actually, a win would be once a month at the beginning. If you're not doing it at all, it's like starting to just bring that in as something new. Because then, once again, we're talking about choice. And for so many in relationship, the choice isn't even there. It's the
Yeah.
communication isn't there. It's just patterns playing out in the quiet and darkness of intimacy that's so taboo.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. And it all comes down to choice. If someone wants to get in shape, they prioritize time in the gym. Someone doesn't give a fuck, they prioritize TV and Netflix, right? It all comes down to priorities. It's like, what kind of sex do you want to be having? Do you want good sex or not?
I think it's important for the men to hear once more that there's a there's an extreme amount in quantity and quality of numbness that women are experiencing. And you listening, if you're with a woman, it's highly probable
Yes.
that there's a lot of numbness in her body, in that part of her body.
Yeah. Especially because women have been conditioned that they are meant to be pretty and perfect and put together. And that pretty, perfect, put together woman is so constricted and tight in her system. And, we're holding on to layers of trauma and sexual abuse and all these things in our bodies that to have a man who you feel so comfortable in your own skin with that you don't care about your sagging breasts or your size of your labias or any of this shit, where you can really start to soften and open and experience your body with another human. Again, that level of safety, and when your woman's vulva and vagina is numb, the only way to change numbness is to start to create safety so she can soften and open. But that safety doesn't happen in the bedroom. And this is work, A good sex life doesn't just fucking happen. Just like a healthy, strong body doesn't just fucking happen. You have to put in effort across the board, right?
I want to speak to a word for the men to help them see a certain perspective of this, but a huge aspect is the amount of nourishment that comes from the sex.
Yeah.
And you stepping into being the type of man that encourages this slowness, this safety, this opening, we can say, the amount of nourishment that you'll create in your relationship is on a whole other level. So there might be men listening that are like, no, I could never, I need the pussy to look this way. I need the sex to be jackhammery like this. Like Carly just said, it takes dedication, and ultimately those of us that are in the world having that quickie crotch sneeze sex, we are not nourished. We are being deprived of a vitality that is so refreshing and fulfilling.
Yeah, 100%. And one aspect that I think is super important for men to look at is like why they need that jackhammer. A lot of men have numbness in their penis too because of circumcision scars. Whether you're happy you got circumcised or not is irrelevant. The reality on a physiological level, that scar tissue is creating numbness in the head of your penis throughout the whole shaft of your penis. And that creates, when we're numb, we need more force to feel anything in our bodies. right? And if you can change the way you touch your body as a man and come into a different kind of relationship with your penis and have that conversation with your woman, it's like maybe you should start touching your vulva in a different way too, so that we both can start to shift and change this. I remember at a retreat I held one time, I talked about giving a soft cock massage and blowjob. And the women are like, what the fuck are you talking about? And I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about? You've been married for 20 fucking years and you've only touch your man's cock when it's rock hard.
Experience.
Like, give me a break, you know? But this level of softness requires a huge amount of vulnerability that people aren't willing to go into. And we have to mature the fuck up, you know? And really become adults who are emotionally intelligent and can ask for the vulnerable thing and can do the vulnerable thing and meet each other. And it to me, it's all comes down to what do we want long term? Do we want a long term relationship where you're going to have beautiful sex until you're 80, 90? Because that's possible
Yeah.
if we make the choices now that set us up for that kind of life then, right?
I love that you brought this up in a way of we can be on the journey together. If I'm in a relationship or, I can do it alone too, but this idea of being in the process together, men and women, where it's like the vast majority of us are numb. We've been programmed through porn, like in so many different ways of how we have sex, sterilization, all these different things. And so we've got stuff to do on our own and we get to do it together that we
Yeah.
can talk to one another and be like, hey, I just listened to this podcast or I just heard about this. And they said that we might have some numbness. I wonder if we could practice slowing down and learning our bodies in a different way together and on our own, and we can share about that experience.
Yeah.
Like the
100%.
the women can set aside the vibrator that they've just been buzzing their clit with their whole life, and the guy can put the porn away for a second and stop just, jerking one off in 5 minutes
Yeah.
and be on that path together, creating intimacy, creating connection, and awakening the body again.
Exactly. Yeah. And this is this deep awakening, this deep safety, this deep opening and softness that's coming into the body is the animal primal body coming back online. A lot of people, again, have this idea built up in their head that the animal body is just growling and gritty, and it's not. It's a deeply in tune, attuned body, both in tune and attuned. I watch my horses. It's like the animal world communicates through body language, right? And can you actually be in your fucking body so that you can read your woman's body language and so that you can communicate with your body language? Just a look across the room has the ability to open a woman's heart or
Mm,
close it down, right? And
mm.
same thing, how many of you guys get fucking daggers, right? But it's we need to take this to an even deeper fucking level, especially in the bedroom.
I think this is such a key element for men in their own self pleasure practices of how they touch themselves.
Yeah.
And a huge one, in the same way we talked about earlier, a huge one for men is that we're supposed to be hard all the time. And we're supposed to be hard on the drop of a dime. And if we're not hard, like something's wrong with us and we need to get it together, which creates this huge separation of mind and body. And that the mind should get what it wants, and that the intelligence of the body is some bullshit and it's not even thought about as an intelligence of the body.
Yeah.
I think this is a huge one for men, that we start to understand just how brilliantly intelligent our bodies are. And I've shared this before, but I want to share it again. Is I had an experience recently where I was with a woman and I was very turned on by this woman. And I had never had an experience where I wasn't hard with her. But I did in an experience. I was like, I wasn't getting hard. And luckily I knew this information. I had been thinking about this stuff. So I was just like, cool, we'll do other stuff. We'll be intimate. We'll be present with what is. And the next day I took her to the hospital because an ovarian cyst burst.
Hmm.
And it was like my body knew something that my mind couldn't have possibly just known, you know?
Totally. Yeah.
And I think that this is something that isn't spoken about enough, is just how intelligent the body is.
100%. Yeah. Yeah, and it's just another level of the disconnection of being disconnected from that intelligence, right? Yeah. Putting our bodies in these boxes, these cookie cutter ways of how everything should perform. It's the same thing with women. Oh, if she's not wet, then, but we also have to look at like all the layers of toxicity and hormonal disruption that all of us have, men and women, and how that is also affecting our sex lives in a deep way.
I think about the correlation for men of how our minds have been so sexualized,
Hmm.
but then like the way that testosterone numbers are plummeting.
Yeah,
So we've got these hypersexualized minds, but these very low
level.
levels of that primal animal hormonal
Yeah,
influence. And it's such an interesting thing to experience working with men, and in my own life to be curious about that. I actually have not tested my testosterone levels, but I keep pushing it away on my list, but I need to just go, and just because I'm curious.
totally. Yeah, yeah,
And I think it's something that a lot of men don't actually think about when it comes to intimacy, when it comes to sexuality, when it comes to the relationship with their partner. Once again, even if we just look at the monthly cycle.
yeah. Yeah. And it's also like men used to live lives when testosterone is coursing through, and ruling their body. Men used to live lives where they were getting that testosterone expression out in other ways and
Yeah,
not just jackhammer sex,
totally.
right? Men were out fucking building
Yeah,
shit,
yeah.
fighting, and like, living these extremely masculine lives. And now a lot of dudes are just sitting in front of a fucking computer all day and they're not getting any kind of exertion out, right? And that needs to be looked at because like my partner, I can tell when he's not getting any kind of physical exertion, the sex gets a little bit rougher, a little bit more jackhammery, a little bit more friction. And it's like, okay, you need to go do guy shit to get that out of your system so that we can have more nourishing sex.
Wow. That's so profound to hear that reflection of like when you actually experiencing that in a partner, of like when they're getting away from that natural testosterone manly expression in the world, that then
Yeah.
it makes its way there.
Yeah, like we should be wanting our men to be masculine as fuck, doing all the guy shit so that it's supporting their testosterone so that when they come home, they can be that soft teddy bear, right? So that we get that out of them, right?
Mm.
Yeah.
It's yeah, as a man in the world today, there are very few places where that's encouraged. It's like
Very cute.
sports. You have to, sports, and then there you have to face like your mind stuff of being good enough and being kicked off the team when you were a kid or whatever. And there's so much video games, scrolling, watching, that's not gonna have our testosterone pumping, and women being called to us because they're feeling just that yang power. Like they're not gonna feel that attraction because we're not emanating that thing in our lives,
Exactly. Yeah.
which is actually one of the things that's called me more into physical fitness, is that understanding.
Yeah.
And I don't go because I want to look a certain way. I go because I want a certain energy that pumps through my body, that
Yeah.
pumps through my system, that primes me, not just for the bedroom, but so I am more embodied in my masculinity and can feel a connection to that.
Exactly. It feeds you. It feeds men. Like just men being able to go outside and chop wood, go outside and fucking build something, you know? being physical with our bodies, even just in that way as well. Not just being it's not about just being a gym bro and pumping the weights. It's also like using your mind and doing this shit that is literally wired for centuries in your system to do, right?
Mm. It's almost like an aspect of a man's own, like it's his own foreplay.
Yeah.
Like going out, learning to do some of these things that we have been wired for so long is like an aspect of our own foreplay and our own in the same way that safety is created outside of the bedroom.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. Yeah.
So you've shared so much with us today. I'm so grateful. What is anything that comes to mind for you that you want to share with men, with the listeners, with all that we've shared, kind of tying a bow on it for them to really understand about relating with women, being intimate with them, being connected with them, understanding their bodies, whatever's present for you?
I mean, I think the biggest thing, like we talked about at the beginning, is learning how to touch your woman in a different way, slow and soften your touch down, right? Just try holding her vulva and breathing and kissing her and take all the hardness and the fastness out of it and be okay with taking orgasm off the table, right? We are so orgasm oriented that and so many men put their self-worth on being able to make a woman orgasm. And that is a total mental mind fuck that conditioning needs to be, unwound if you feel like that. You got to figure that out because and both have to figure that out. A lot of women feel like, what the fuck's wrong with me? He can't come, he can't get hard, yada, yada, yada. And it needs to, the conversation that I think people need to be having is like, how intimate can we be with one another?
Mm.
Because when the intimacy deepens, the pleasure is going to deepen. And can we experience different ways of feeling pleasure? You know? Yeah.
I feel like that's such a potent subject, the one around orgasm. And I feel like even just a man, if he was to say to his partner, you don't have to orgasm every time, just so you know, like no reason whatsoever, but just to be like, hey, I just want you to know that there's no pressure on my side for you to orgasm every time. Even if there's no reason to say it or whatever, but just to say to those words, I can like imagine women softening in the verbalization of that pressure.
Yeah. Totally. And then you can take it to an even like the more intelligent and connected and in tune you get with this stuff is like, let's build up to orgasm and then take a break. And let's build up to orgasm and let's use this arousal, this engorgement of blood to really start to soften and open and change your tissues, change both of your tissues, open your penis in a different way, open her vulva and her vagina in a different way, right?
Hmm.
Like that's an even higher level of aware sex, conscious sex, when we're using our pleasure to heal our tissues.
I imagine that you're aware of many, many more levels to this, and I'm sure it's a never-ending unfolding path of wisdom and experiences. And I'm very grateful for you coming on and sharing with us today. And for everyone else, I'll put Carly's information in the notes below. So if you want to engage with Carly's content, I highly recommend it. Whoever you are, wherever you are, it's great content. And very grateful for you being here today.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, Ian.
Yeah. And thank you for the work you're doing in the world.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, everybody. That's another episode of Men and Sex. Hope to see you on another one. And like I said, if you want to get any of the notes from what Carly's doing, check down in the description. And honestly, I would recommend that you listen to this one again because there's so many nuggets in it. You might need to get a pen and paper and write down all the things that you can start to integrate into your own life. Thank you, everybody.